December 23rd, 2025. Holiday travelers braced for rain, but no one expected a storm so fierce it would shatter Christmas records, bury mountain towns in mud, and trap families under a state of emergency. Scientists warned this sudden onslaught was more than a fluke. It was a chilling preview of California's new climate reality. So what triggered the most dangerous holiday flood in over half a century, and could much worse still be on the way? Moisture began gathering far out in the Pacific days before the chaos reached California. Satellite analysts at the National Weather Service tracked a narrow but dense plume of water vapor stretching from the tropics near Hawaii, arcing northeast toward the west coast. This phenomenon, known as a pineapple express, acts like a conveyor belt, pulling warm, moisture-rich air thousands of miles across open ocean. By December 21st, the plume had locked onto California, feeding a surge of subtropical humidity into the atmosphere. Sea surface temperatures along the plume's path ran several degrees above average, helping the air soak up even more water. As the moisture-laden current approached, forecasters measured integrated vapor transport, IVT, at levels rarely seen in December. The numbers signaled a dangerous setup. The atmosphere was primed to dump torrents of rain as soon as the plume struck land. The first atmospheric river hit, drenching northern and central California, but the system barely paused before a second surge arrived. Each wave recharged the air with more tropical moisture, building up a reservoir above the state. By the time the third atmospheric river lined up, the ground was already saturated. Rivers were running high, and the skies still threatened more. Meteorologists warned that the sequence, 3 atmospheric rivers in 5 days, was both rare and alarming, setting the stage for an extraordinary deluge, just as families prepared for Christmas. Behind the scenes, National Weather Service analysts watched the storm's signature on satellite imagery, a bright, unbroken ribbon of water vapor pulsing with energy, aimed straight at Southern California. The question was no longer if the storms would hit, but how much water the land could possibly take before disaster struck. At 6 p.m. on December 23, 2025, the National Weather Service issued a bulletin that sent a jolt through emergency management centers across California. The warning was not routine. This was a rare, high-end alert reserved for the most dangerous flooding events, a classification meteorologists dread but train for. On the internal AR scale, this storm qualified as AR4, the second highest category, driven by extraordinary levels of moisture transport from the tropics. Forecasters measured integrated vapor transport at rates that placed the event in the upper echelon of atmospheric rivers ever recorded in winter. The official bulletin stretched across California, Nevada, and Arizona, placing more than 43 million people under flood watches. The phrasing was blunt. Life-threatening flooding was likely, especially in areas near recent wildfire burn scars and along already swollen rivers. For context, high-risk warnings like this are responsible for the vast majority of flood damage nationwide. 8 out of every $10 lost to flooding can be traced to events of this magnitude. Inside the Oxnard Forecast Office, staff worked in rotating shifts, monitoring radar and satellite feeds in real time. The decision to issue the highest risk level was not made lightly. It required consensus among meteorologists, hydrologists, and emergency planners, all reviewing the same alarming data: rainfall rates capable of overwhelming any urban drainage system, and a saturated landscape primed for disaster. Audio from a forecaster's briefing captured the urgency. This is not a typical winter storm. We are looking at a Pineapple Express with AR4 intensity. People need to understand, this is the kind of event that changes lives. The bulletin's footprint covered nearly the entire state. Alerts were pushed to phones, radio stations, and television newsrooms. Local officials scrambled to activate emergency plans, knowing that the next 48 hours would test the limits of California's flood response. The warning was clear: stay off the roads, prepare to evacuate if ordered, and expect conditions to deteriorate rapidly. For millions, Christmas would arrive under the shadow of a historic flood threat. Rainfall totals from this storm revealed a dramatic contrast across California's varied landscape. In the Ventura County mountains, gauges registered more than 17 inches, with some slopes collecting torrents of water in just 48 hours. East of Los Angeles, communities near the foothills faced up to 12 inches, much of it falling in a relentless overnight barrage. The Los Angeles basin itself, stretching from Burbank through Inglewood, saw widespread accumulations from 4 to 8 inches, enough to overwhelm storm drains and send water cascading down city streets. Moving south, Santa Barbara Airport reported nearly 6 inches of rain in 2 days, the highest Christmas total there since the mid-1950s. Along the coast, rainfall eased slightly, but still caused localized flooding in low-lying neighborhoods. Inland, the San Gabriel and San Bernardino Mountains acted as catch basins, wringing moisture from the saturated air and funneling it down steep canyons. In places like Wrightwood, the combination of steep slopes and recent wildfire burn scars amplified the danger, turning heavy rain into destructive debris flows. The state's network of automated gauges captured the storm's footprint in real time. Data from the California Department of Water Resources showed rainfall rates peaking above 1 inch per hour at the height of the event. These surges hit hardest in mountain catchments, but even urban centers could not escape the deluge. The spatial pattern of rain, heaviest in the mountains, intense but slightly less so in the valleys and basins, set the stage for the chaos that followed, as water and mud spilled from hillsides into towns below. Christmas 2025 entered the record books as Southern California's wettest holiday in more than half a century. Downtown Los Angeles, a city known for its mild winters, broke its Christmas Eve rainfall record, set back in 1971. By midnight, rain gauges in the heart of the city had measured more precipitation in 24 hours than most Decembers deliver in an entire month. In Santa Barbara, the airport logged nearly 6 inches of rain in 2 days, a total unmatched since the Eisenhower era. Across the state, meteorologists compared the deluge to the most infamous storms in California's history. State archives list only 3 other holiday periods with higher rainfall totals since 1877. The December 2025 event now stands as the 4th wettest 2-day holiday stretch ever recorded in California. These numbers are not just statistics. They represent a profound departure from what most Californians expect at the end of December. For many, the holiday season usually means cool, dry days and a gentle winter sun. Instead, Christmas morning arrived with flooded streets and rivers rising out of their banks. The data will be studied for years, but the message was immediate and unmistakable. The scale of this storm placed it in the upper tier of California's recorded weather extremes. The Christmas floods of 2025 set a new benchmark for what is possible, reshaping the state's sense of what a holiday storm can bring. Emergency dispatchers worked through the night as calls for help poured in from every corner of Los Angeles County. Streets vanished beneath rushing water, and entire neighborhoods found themselves cut off by rising floodwaters. In the San Gabriel foothills, a helicopter pilot from the county fire department described the chaos. Headlights blinking from stranded cars, families waving from rooftops, and debris swirling in the flood below. The radio crackled with urgent requests. One chopper alone lifted 21 people from vehicles trapped along a washed-out stretch of highway, each rescue timed between breaks in the relentless downpour. Swift water teams fanned out across the region, moving door to door in neighborhoods where the current had turned quiet streets into rivers. In Wrightwood, rescuers navigated knee-deep mud and unstable ground to reach residents trapped in second-story bedrooms, their first floors buried in hardened sludge. By Christmas morning, more than 100 people had been pulled to safety in Los Angeles County alone. Emergency responders, over 120 of them, worked through the holiday, braving the cold and darkness to search for anyone left behind. But not every call ended in relief. At least 4 deaths were reported across California during the storm. In Redding, a motorist was swept away after attempting to cross a flooded roadway. In San Diego, A man died when a tree branch loosened by saturated soil crashed through his roof. Along the Mendocino coast, a 70-year-old woman was struck by a massive wave while walking near the water's edge. 2 more lives were lost in a multi-car accident on Interstate 5, where slick pavement and poor visibility turned a routine drive into disaster. For the families of those lost, the holiday will be remembered not for gifts or gatherings, but for the suddenness with which the flood transformed their lives. The numbers, rescues counted in the hundreds, deaths tallied in headlines, only hint at the human cost. Behind every statistic is a story of split-second decisions, acts of courage, and moments when help arrived just in time or did not arrive soon enough. Interstate 5, the backbone of California's highway system, ground to a halt as floodwaters crept across lanes near Burbank Airport. By midday on Christmas Eve, the Grapevine was shut down, stranding travelers on one of the busiest weeks of the year. Caltrans crews, already stretched thin, scrambled to place barriers and reroute traffic, but water kept rising, filling underpasses and turning off ramps into lakes. Highway 138 outside Wrightwood simply vanished beneath a torrent of mud and debris, cutting off access to mountain towns and leaving residents isolated. Topanga Canyon Boulevard, a key artery through the Santa Monica Mountains, was choked with mud, rocks, and toppled trees. Crews worked through the night to clear slides, but each new burst of rain brought more debris crashing down. In the chaos, the California Highway Patrol logged more than 350 traffic collisions across Los Angeles. Fender benders and pileups multiplied on rain-slicked streets where storm drains backed up and visibility dropped to near zero. The storm's reach extended far beyond the roads. Power lines sagged under the combined weight of water and wind, snapping in dozens of neighborhoods. At the peak of the flood, more than 100,000 customers lost electricity across the state. Utility workers faced the twin dangers of live wires and flooding as they moved from block to block, restoring power where they could. In Santa Barbara, the airport closed twice in 2 days as water pooled across the airfield, grounding flights and leaving holiday travelers stranded in terminals. Transit officials and utility managers described the event as a logistical nightmare. With so many routes blocked and power out in critical hubs, emergency response slowed to a crawl. Even as the rain eased, the damage was done. Roads cracked and buckled, power grids destabilized, and the state's transportation network was left battered during the year's busiest travel window. When rain falls on a healthy hillside, most of it soaks into the ground or is slowed by roots and undergrowth. But after wildfire, the rules change. In places like Wrightwood, the bridge fire of 2024 left slopes stripped of vegetation and covered in a thin layer of ash and charred soil. United States Geological Survey hydrologists say this surface becomes hydrophobic, water repellent, so rain cannot seep in. Instead, it races downhill, picking up speed and power with every foot of elevation lost. With more than 10 inches of rain falling in just 2 days, the saturated ground had nowhere left to store water. On these burn scars, gravity did the rest. Water sheeted off the slopes, carving channels through loose sediment and carrying rocks, branches, and ash into the valleys below. The result was not just flooding, but debris flows, thick, fast-moving mixtures of mud and boulders that can bury cars and homes in minutes. Evacuation orders went out across 5 Southern California counties as geologists tracked the risk. In Wrightwood, residents watched as rivers of mud overtook streets like Oriole Road, burying houses up to their windows and hardening into mounds that required heavy machinery to clear. United States Geological Survey specialists later traced the flows back to the steepest, most fire-damaged slopes, where the soil's natural sponge had been burned away. For families who rebuilt after the fires, the ground beneath their feet had become a hidden threat, one that turned a winter storm into a disaster. December 2025 did not just break rainfall records, it shattered temperature norms across the West. Climate data confirmed it as the warmest December ever recorded for much of California and neighboring states. Ocean temperatures in the eastern Pacific ran several degrees above normal, fueling the storms with extra moisture. Atmospheric scientists pointed to these sea surface anomalies as a key reason the Pineapple Express delivered such a punishing blow. Warmer air can hold more water vapor, and in this case, the atmosphere was primed to unleash historic rainfall. Climate researcher Daniel Swain explained that what unfolded over Christmas was not a fluke, but a preview of the future. The physics are simple. As the world warms, storms like these become more intense and more frequent. Swain and his colleagues have tracked a steady rise in extreme precipitation events across California, especially those linked to atmospheric rivers. The December floods fit a pattern scientists have warned about for years, one where the line between rare and routine continues to blur. In Sacramento, Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency in 6 counties as the scope of the disaster became clear. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass issued a local emergency, mobilizing city resources and opening emergency shelters. The California National Guard was placed on alert, and water distribution points were set up for neighborhoods cut off by flooding. Officials stressed that adaptation is no longer optional. Upgrading drainage systems, reinforcing infrastructure, and preparing for more frequent evacuations are now part of the state's survival strategy. The message from both scientists and policymakers was blunt. This is not the last time California will face a holiday nightmare fueled by a warming world. This winter, California's record-shattering floods are no longer an outlier. They are a warning. As atmospheric rivers grow fiercer, and the warmest Decembers on record fuel disaster, millions stand in the storm's path. The science is clear. What once seemed unthinkable is now inevitable. Preparedness is not a choice, but a necessity. The future depends on how we act, starting now. Share your perspective below.